Hey everybody, Ethan here, and you're on my side of the room. Today, let's talk a little bit about reggae. Let's not talk about it, let's do it. So through the magic of drum machines, I'm going to play a reggae beat that's on my drum machine, and then I'm going to play something that I whipped up that kind of fits that style, and then we'll talk about what just happened. Here we go. All right, so that's enough to get us started here. So what's going on is I'm starting with my G as my root, and I'm playing the third and the fifth, and back down again, and then throwing in other notes for flavor. But when you add it all up, what I'm really doing is bits and pieces of the G minor pentatonic scale. Now, to the beginner crowd, you're going to be told a lot, like, oh, just do pentatonic, that'll be fine. And that may or may not be true. I mean, trust me, pentatonics bailed me out several times, like, now. But the thing is it doesn't mean play the whole scale up and down robotically over and over. What it means is that's where your notes are coming from. So just this alone, yeah, that's part of the greater scale, because here's the scale. It's just that. It's those 5 notes and then the octave. And 3 of them are right there. So 3 out of 5 was that. And what that really is the G minor arpeggio. So that's another one that, especially when you're newer to the bass, you're going to hear stuff like, oh, play arpeggios. And you might be thinking that means like shred, because that's arpeggiated, and that's different. But an arpeggio is just the individual chord tones of, in this case, G. Or I could do C, or I could do D. So it's not super complicated. It's just when people use words like arpeggio, it can throw you off like, oh man, that's complicated stuff I gotta learn, and it really isn't that complicated. Well, the same is true with reggae. It's not complicated either, and I'm not dissing it, but what I'm saying is, with reggae, you gotta think groove. You gotta think air, meaning put some air between the notes. So I'm establishing G as my root in the beginning. Then I'm giving air. And then I've got these connector notes down here. Or I guess I should say up here, because we're going up. But yeah, I mean, you could just play the root. It's not thrilling, but sure, like as long as you're playing along with what's being presented to you, in this case the bass or the drum beat that I punched up on the drum machine, notice how it's not chugging eighth notes. It's not playing every note you got in the scale as quickly as you can do it. Instead, I'm doing just this to get things established, giving some air, and then so as an example, this is not the be-all and end-all of reggae, and I'm not a reggae bassist, but the purpose of this video is to talk about the genre itself, to kind of get you into it and give you some stuff to think about and try out on your own bass. So hopefully you got your own in front of you right now as we're talking, and you're not just sitting there watching it like it's TV. As if I don't do that. Well, let's now talk about why I'm using this bass and not something else, and what tone I'm looking for. So the tone part has everything to do with why I'm using this bass and not something else. I want dark and low. So that's pretty much that right there. Even if I brighten it up a little with the tone knob, it's not particularly bright. Now this has been a modified bass where I modified it to be more on the low end. So I got flat wound strings on it. I've got an Alnico pickup on this, which this doesn't normally come with. It's a Donner. I'm not plugging it. I get no money whatsoever if you buy one. I'm just telling you that's what I got. But the point is I have a P bass and with flats, and I'm going for that dark sound. Okay, that low, like not a whole lot in the way of treble sound. The heart key is, just set to neutral. I'm not boosting anything, I'm not cutting anything, it's just set to neutral. Why am I not using one of my active basses instead of this passive bass? Well, they're very punchy and bright, and it's not what I'm looking for. Now, here's the thing, and especially if you're newer, and YouTube is great for this. They're going to beat you over the head about buy, and new guitars, and here's the new stuff of the week or whatever. No, you don't need to chase gear. In this instance, if you have a bass, play it. And if it's a Stingray or active or whatever, and it's not what I'm playing, then fine. But what I'm recommending is for reggae, if you have to boost your bass and cut your treble and do whatever you need to do, then yeah, do it. To go lower on it, like it's like deeper in the sound, and not, again, you really don't want mids and treble winning out. You really want the bass frequencies winning out on this. People, when they hear reggae, want to groove. That's kind of the thing. It's a very groove-based genre. Now, this particular nonsense I made up, you could make a progression out of it, so let's do it rather than talk about it. Here we go. So that's an example, like as you see and heard, you can make a progression out of it. Now, that was a really fast progression. There could have been more build up than what I did. I just wanted to show the different, like the 1-4-5 basically that you can do with it. But if you just stayed glued to the G and kept doing stuff up and down the minor pentatonic, you very well could. You could even sneak in the blues note. The thing, though, that I found with reggae is that less is more. And what I mean is if you're going to do that passing note, then do something like this. And I don't know to the extent that you'd even do that, but you want to just kind of make it quick, like that's just a one pass-through thing, and it's part of the greater ball of wax. Like this is basically two measures that we're doing over and over. There's and then air, you see, and here. So that's the thing. Like it's not chugging eights, it's not shredding, it's not going up and down the fretboard playing every note you know. So that's what I really like about it, is that when you listen to reggae, and that's the other thing, is to listen to reggae. And there's mixes on YouTube and stuff you can check out. But I like that instead of dry theory and words like arpeggio and chord tones and how important it all is, and then minor pentatonic and all that, all this came from just noodling around the bass the other night with no filming, no nothing, no agenda. I was just messing around with my bass and the drum machine and punched up that pattern. And I normally hate that pattern, and I forced myself to literally play through it. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, actually I could do something with this. And I just kept staying glued to the G and came up with some stuff, and like, hey, wait a minute, this might be a video in the making. And here we are. So your hip tip for the day is, 1, if you're not familiar with reggae, check it out. 2, get your bass, and if you don't have a drum machine, that's totally fine. You can play along with what you're hearing. Like if you're listening to a reggae song, then pick up on the bass and see if you can play along with it, or make up your own, like, you know, maybe you don't like what their bass line was, maybe you think that it should have been something else, we'll play that. Another thing on YouTube that's great is drummers will put drum loops up that they did with live drums. So like they're your drum machine, and you can check that out and play along with that. And that's what I prefer in this instance, is the drum machine. The drum machine's not dictating that I happen to be playing in G. I'm just doing that just because that's where my hand was when I picked the bass up. A lot of times people say you learn A, because that's where your hand is when you pick the guitar up, and it depends on what you're holding and all that, and who your instructor is if you have one. But a lot of times people learn A minor pentatonic because that's just where their hand was. But you can just as easily slide down and do G. Or you can slide up one and string and do C. I like the G as my starting point. It's just personal preference. But the drum machine isn't dictating that to me at all. Backing tracks, on the other hand, can dictate that, and they'll tell you up front, like, here's the tempo, and here's the chords, and this, and they throw all kinds of stuff in there. Maybe not singing, but just even like what you got to like work with that they threw at you. It can be a bit daunting, especially if you're newer. So I would recommend instead stick with just drum beats, whether it be the drum machine, whether it be YouTube with the live drummers, whatever you can come up with, or just your own imagination. If you got none of that stuff, well, I mean, you got YouTube because you're watching me. So, but what I'm saying is like just less is more. You know, don't psych yourself out and stress yourself out with like trying to do all the music theory in a day. But playing and noodling around sometimes, like what I did was like, hey, I just followed what sounded good. And the next thing you know, I look at the stupid bass chart on the wall and, oh, I'm doing the minor arpeggio, great. You know, never mind looking at that, my brain melts, my eyes glaze over. But in the wild, messing around with it, it's like it turns out that was what was appropriate. All right, well, what about this? What about major? So that's the major arpeggio, this is the minor. All right, so how does the major sound? I don't like that. I like that a lot better. The drums aren't telling me that. The music is telling me that. So as I'm playing the bass, it's like, yeah, it's just reggae-wise, this major stuff just isn't it for this particular thing I'm playing. Maybe there's something else in major that would work better for reggae, but I leave that to you. Mess around with your bass and find out, is major ever going to work for reggae for you, or is that not the case? Or is reggae more a minor thing? Find out. Mess around. No one's going to die because you played this note and it sounds terrible. What's going to happen is you're going to learn, hey, when I do this stuff, and I hit this note, it doesn't sound good. I'm just going to stop playing that note and move over here. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. And let me know in the comments if it was, because I really do benefit from your feedback. I would really appreciate that. So keep learning, keep playing, and I will catch you in the next video.